Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is true. Donald Trump is basically the favorite in every single swing state right now, according to the betting, outside of possibly just Nevada. Now, when you talk about Trump's chances to win each swing state, I'm going to go from easiest to hardest, most likely to least likely in terms of the betting, and also in putting my own opinion into it as well. And when you talk about the top seven, the big seven swing states, you can argue Virginia, Minnesota. I know people saying there's great stuff coming out of Virginia. We'll have to see. But we're not going to talk about Virginia or Minnesota. We're just going to go with the core seven swing states. And right now, it does seem like slightly Arizona might be the state. And as you can see, even trending more to Donald Trump, almost around a 70% chance to win Arizona. The polls out of Arizona recently, like within the last week, have gotten really close. Trump was up by about 2 or 3 points on average 2 or 3 weeks ago. They've narrowed, but there still is an expectation. This really isn't just to do with the polls. It has to do with campaign strategy. It really seems like the Harris campaign is more so focused on North Carolina, Georgia, and then the Rust Belt rather than Nevada and Arizona, and especially Arizona, with a lot of Harris people saying we don't need Arizona, it's whatever. It does feel like Donald Trump is going to be taking Arizona in the 2024 election. And right now he's up by about a point in terms of the polls. It's performing way better than he did in 2020 at this time. But obviously the bigger thing here is that Trump, we saw he had a nice lead in mid-July. I mean, he's almost bringing it back to the Biden levels where he was up in everything in mid-July, around 75% chance to win Arizona. It got really tight in mid-August with Kamala and her hype, but even with that post-debate, we really haven't seen Arizona bounce for Kamala really at all, and Donald Trump is up to around a 70% chance to win. So Arizona right now, when you're talking about most likely state for Trump, I would put it in that category. It is 11 electoral votes, so that I would go Arizona, probably the most likely for Trump, and certainly about a 70-30 type favorite when you look at that state. Now, when it comes to the next state, you could argue Georgia, you could argue North Carolina. Looks like they have Georgia at a 64% chance for Trump, as you can see. This is basically all the swing state polls. Trump is building a nice lead in a lot of these where, at least within the past 3 or 4 weeks, he's gone up. You saw 2 weeks ago, or almost a month ago, Trump was sitting around a 17-point lead. Now it's expanded even more to about a 25-point lead, about a 65-35 chance that Trump wins Georgia. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very hard when you get into Georgia, North Carolina, the Rust Belt. These are all states that, especially Georgia and North Carolina, possibly Trump, maybe a little bit higher of a chance to win than the Rust Belt because the Rust Belt is so condensed. It would be Arizona, that's the easiest, and then Georgia, North Carolina, then the Rust Belt, then Nevada. That's probably where I would put it right now in terms of easiest, hardest for Trump. But Georgia, above 60%. We saw what happened in Georgia in 2020, the ballot harvesting. And by the way, it looks like they're doing that again. I mean, the numbers in Detroit, Wayne County, it's just unbelievable. It's not believable, the numbers in Wayne County. You've got an inner city like that. I mean, maybe I'll discuss this in another video, but the reason those numbers are so mind-blowing is because it's very surprising that Detroit, which is Wayne County, would have the highest absentee ballot return rate, higher than a lot of the, upper middle class suburban cities surrounding Detroit in Michigan, not just surrounding Detroit, but just that's very peculiar. That doesn't seem very realistic. It's just strange that they would have the highest return rate, an inner city like that. But it is what it is. Either way, when I look at Georgia, we know their ballot harvesting operation in 2020, but it was also just the turnout that Georgia got and really all these other states got. And I think Georgia is going to be a big difference in terms of the turnout being a little bit lower, which is going to help Trump significantly, especially in the big cities like Atlanta. That's how they were able to win Georgia. Georgia was not a swing state up until, I didn't think there was any way Georgia was going to go Democrat in 2020. And to be fair to me, it was 0.3%. My goodness. And it was, all the counting that happened after the election. It took them like 5 days to call the state. So it wasn't like this, oh my God, Democrats won the state easily. They won it by 0.3%, and they won it with a bunch of stuff happening, like a bunch. And you could even see when Kamala hasn't even gone ahead in Georgia. So Trump's been leading the betting this entire time in the state of Georgia, which is also a very nice bullish sign. I do not want to click on that Iran topic right there. My goodness. So you look at Georgia being possibly the second easiest, then North Carolina. You take a look at North Carolina. We saw it get a bit closer, maybe a little bit later in the timeline than the other two states. Late September, it was around a 12-point lead for Trump, but he's extended it back up to around 25-point lead or around there. And what I'll say is North Carolina is a little bit different than these other states because these other states, Trump lost at least one election cycle. North Carolina, Trump won in 2016 and he won in 2020. Now, it was closer in 2020, but it was also a lot worse of an environment for Republicans in general in 2020. Now it's better when you look at the party ID, the advantage. It's not much for the Democrats. So when you factor all of that in, you would think North Carolina would go to Trump possibly by a bigger margin than it did in 2020, where it was only a 1.3 point victory for Trump. And the polls are very, very close. There's not a huge, I could go to the polls and Real Clear Politics. I've done that, a lot recently. So it's like a 1 point lead for Trump, a half point lead in North Carolina. You kind of get the gist. You got to kind of just use indicators when you're predicting the stuff. If the polls are within the margin, if we get multiple polls where Trump's +2, +3, +2, +3, then yes, that becomes a lot more likely. But we're getting polls where it's like Harris +1, Trump +1, tie, Harris +1, Trump +2, Harris plus. They're just so condensed. So it's better to look at betting and other indicators when deciding this when the polls are that condensed. And you're seeing, and also another indicator is just Trump overperforming relative to the polls in both 2020 and 2016, and then the rhetoric that they use and say, well, the midterms overestimated Trump in 2022. Well, not Trump, Republicans in 2022. Well, the midterms also, if you look at 2018, the midterms were better, but they were still horrible in 2020. They were terrible in 2016. They were better during the midterms, the polls were, and then they were horrible in 2020. It's presidential years with Trump is where the polls are terrible. Now, maybe this is a correction, but why would I expect this massive correction when they've underestimated Trump significantly in both 2016 and 2020? So you're expecting a deviation from what the polls have done the previous two cycles. That's a lot of cope from liberals, let's be honest there. So North Carolina, you're looking at it, I would say, very, very solid chance Trump wins it. And then you're kind of getting into the Rust Belt states. And I would imagine when you look at this, it would be Pennsylvania. Yeah, it would be Pennsylvania slightly. We've always thought Pennsylvania, and you can see this recent trend here. This is what we're looking at. You're talking about back and forth, back and forth. Trump did have around a 10-point lead in early September. Back and forth, Kamala lead. Trump goes back up, and now it's back up to around an 11-point lead in Pennsylvania for Trump. And people are trying to interpret the early vote, everything like that. It's very hard to do that, let's be honest. But overall, I would say Pennsylvania, there's an argument and there's a narrative that it is the most Republican Rust Belt state. Obviously, Ohio is the most, but we're not counting Ohio because Ohio is definitely going to go to Trump. By the way, I finally saw what I believe to be an accurate poll out of Ohio. It had Trump, well, I'm not sure if Trump's going to win Ohio by 11, but it had Trump +11 in Ohio and then Moreno +2. And my prediction is Trump +9.5, Moreno +3. There's not going to be that much split ballot voting. Trump +9.5 in Ohio, Moreno +2 to +3, and they're destroying Moreno with these abortion ads. My God, we've been getting so many abortion ads against Moreno because they have to do it because they know this is a Republican state now, Ohio is, and they're trying to say, well, Sherrod Brown is this independent, and it's total crap. I mean, he's voted with Biden 97% of the time. It's obviously a total lie, but they have to make Sherrod Brown this independent now because Ohio's conservative. But when you look at Pennsylvania, I think it is probably the most Trump's best chance out of the Rust Belt, and he's got a better than 50% chance in all these states. I think he's the favorite, but with Pennsylvania, you're parsing through hairs here. It's very close. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's like, yeah, Pennsylvania is slightly. You've got Michigan here, Trump sitting at a 54% chance. And this is the crazy one. So this is the crazy one. Kamala Harris was a big favorite in mid-August. She was a huge favorite in late September. Donald Trump has made up and went ahead for the first time since the summer, since late July when Harris entered and took over the lead in the betting in Michigan. So Harris was the leader in Michigan by 10, 15 points, even more than that, by 30 points at a certain point a few months ago. And now you're seeing the switch. Here's the switch. Trump is all the way down, and you're seeing the betting switch. You're seeing the polling shift. And now you're even seeing polls that are more conservative in Michigan than they are in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And you're also starting to see the Jill Stein effect. Dark Jill Stein, yes. She is going to be taking a point away from Kamala, and they're going to be pissed off about it. Remember what happened in 2016 when she took a point away from Hillary and Trump won by 0.3? This is not good for them. And they're running ads against Jill Stein now because she's taking stuff away from them. She's taking like half a point to a point. It's going to be huge when you're talking about these margins being so close. But you've got Michigan there. You've also got Wisconsin. How about Wisconsin now? Trump is leading in Wisconsin. This is another one where you did have Trump up and then Kamala took the lead. And it was always Pennsylvania. This is how it was throughout the summer going into the fall. The narrative was Pennsylvania's a pure toss-up, and Wisconsin and Michigan are the slight Harris leans, and even the betting reflects it. They say, why are you using this betting site? It's Republican degens. Then why is Wisconsin and Michigan, Harris was the heavy favorite? I mean, they're shifting because they're realizing the polls are what they are and Trump's going to win, and they're starting to understand it, and that's why this is a shift, okay? You're talking about Harris leading this by 14, now Trump's up by 5 in the span of less than a month. So these are legitimate shifts happening within the betting, within Polymarket when it comes to these swing states, as you can see there, as it's depicted. And then you would be talking about the final swing state, which would be Nevada. And even Nevada, you could say, well, it's a slight Harris lean. Trump did have a very big lean. This was, during the summer. And this has been a very, very close state, to be fair. But it's kind of been thought of as a state where Harris is polling maybe a little bit better than Trump. But the thing is, with Nevada, Harris was propped up by a +7 Bloomberg poll for a while, and I think that got out of the aggregate, and people are starting to realize it. Yeah, she had like a +7. I don't know, it might still be in the aggregate on Real Clear Politics, I'm not sure, but either way, it's basically 50-50 in Nevada. Nevada is the least important swing state just because of the electoral votes, only 6 electoral votes for it, but in general, yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. Trump basically the favorite in every swing state outside of Nevada, and even Nevada is around a 50-50 when it comes to that. And then you've got margins of victories there. You could also just go to, I feel like they just have just pure, well, here, where's the popular vote exactly? Because I know the popular vote has, Trump's up to 58 right now to 42. That's a 16-point lead there. That is crazy. This is interesting. Who will 538 predict the election for? And there's a 68% chance Harris. That's interesting. I guess they just started this because there's no timeline of it. But honestly, 538 might have to flip to Trump. Imagine if they do that. That's how crazy this is. 538 and how biased they choose their pollsters, and they're all liberal. It's crazy. But either way, it does look like, will Trump win Florida by 8+ points? Yes. Yeah, this is a good market. Yes, Donald Trump will win Florida very likely by over 8 points. There's actual people that think it's probably going to be around, according to expert calculations, an 11.5-point victory for Donald Trump. Those are election experts saying it, including me. So listen, when you look at Florida, this is the problem with the way they're polling Florida, and a lot of people are doing this, and this was pointed out. They're polling Florida with a +3 Republican environment. That's totally wrong. That's what it was in 2020 because Trump won Florida by 3, but it's like a +8 Republican environment, and then Trump also wins independents in Florida. He's probably going to win the state by around 11. And it's not surprising this market opened with a 14% chance, and now it's basically tripled to around a 40% chance. Trump winning Florida probably by, 8 is, I could see Trump win it by 8, but I think it's going to be more. Because when you factor in the DeSantis-Rubio victories, and you also factor in the shift that we've seen, it's definitely going to be more than 6, more than 7. It's hard to give an exact number just because I don't know the absolute environment, but when you look at the voter registration's like +8 Republican, and then Trump also takes independents in Florida as well by a good rate. That's why it would be about 11-point victory in Florida or a 10-point victory. But either way, right now I'd say Trump's up in basically every single swing state. There's no doubt about it, except for Nevada where it's basically tied. Guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.